Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt
And I'm
Roast.
Jessica Bun Bun.
We are here with our reaction and review for the Vampire Lestat Season 3, Episode 2.
Mhm.
We hope everyone out there is hungry because cabbage is on the menu following this episode. I mean, everything about this was incredibly entertaining. The entire opening montage. It was meaningful. It was also weirdly hilarious, and it served as this great dichotomy between the Gabriella who was and then the Gabriella who is in the much more recent past.
Also, right off the rip, whoever the writer is that decided to give the pseudonym to Louis as Mr. Pitt, you totally deserve a raise. That was the funniest thing I had seen. I was like, what a beautiful homage to Brad Pitt and the films.
It really okay. Embarrassing confession time. I did not put that together until right this very moment. I was
Oh,
like,
hey, did you guys get it? Let me know if you've seen the movies and you've now seen the show. Did you see that connection? Because he also played Louis in the movies.
another confession time. I've never seen the movie. Like this is the thing. My movie education is nowhere near as good as Jess's. I maybe watch like 3 movies a year. Watch too much television.
Listen, Interview with the Vampire movie, it was pretty good. I was always like a little iffy on the Tom Cruise of it all, but I thought that Brad Pitt was pretty good. He's no Jacob Anderson, but
Well, who is?
I really love that they put that out there. That was like, now Louis is pretending to be a Mr. Pitt.
Well, and I think that's another just small reminder of everything this show does so well because there's
Yeah.
humor, there's romance, there's devastation, there's
Yes.
music, and then
Yes.
amidst all of this, we have this big reveal when it comes to Bruce at the end of this
Wow, it's
episode.
crazy.
Yeah, like I don't think either one of us saw that coming.
No.
And then kind of sprinkled throughout this episode, we get a little bit of hints as to the Akasha of it all and some of what may potentially be coming that I'm starting to feel like is very much tied to whatever has happened to Lestat at the site of the auction.
Listen, I also didn't expect to see as much Louis as we are getting. I mean, we haven't read the books, but you guys have let us know in the comments that he's not really in the later Lestat books that much. So I kind of was like, we got a little bit in the premiere. We're
Yeah.
going to get a little sprinkle here and there, maybe some flashbacks. I did not expect to get so much of him in this episode. And on top of it, that now we seemingly have this story that he is going to be going after Killer slash Bruce.
They're doing a very good job of finding ways to integrate a lot of these characters.
Yes.
And they're not doing it while fundamentally changing the entire show. Like the Family Matters one's always the classic one where Urkel shows up and then it just ends up becoming Urkel's show
Yeah.
slowly over time. They're not going to that extreme, but they are realizing everybody loved Louis and Lestat. I think we will
Yes.
all continue to love Louis and Lestat until the end of time. So they're just going to continue to give us all of this good food over at least the rest of this season.
Yes, and these two crazy kids are gonna have to find a way back to each other. Come on, Lestat. Stop being such a brat. You will get past this.
Just that moment in the concert scene of him just floating up that my heart.
I know, was floating out of my chest until he held up that book and was
Okay,
basically
listen.
like, these songs aren't about you.
We're just gonna pretend that part didn't happen, and we're just gonna focus on the longing, guys. This show does longing like nobody's business.
Yeah.
But all right, obviously we have a lot to get into in this video. But before we do, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to feast on all of our other The Vampire Lestat just videos that we have here at the channel. And of course, we want to know what your thoughts are, your theories in the
Yes.
comments as we go forward.
And speaking of theories, we have a new theory up for our YouTube members here on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
You can join that here. Helps us out here at the channel. And also you get our Lestat theory about whether or not the character is actually dead. Gone dead. And that this auction is an estate auction.
Yeah, we really appreciate your support, and that's a really fun discussion.
Yeah.
Well worth checking out. Okay, let's just start with the Bruce of it all, because this is, I think, the thing that really surprised us both. I thought
Yeah.
that this character was completely gone. I'm not going to say I had like locked the vault entirely on Bruce, but I had the keys misplaced somewhere and I had to metaphorically like run around and try to find it again.
Yeah, I was completely shocked to hear this name at all. But I mean, if we can't have Claudia, and we had as much of her as we could, where, Louis is describing her, thinking that he saw her and he saw an older version of her at this restaurant that he followed her to. And it was, the wait staff there. It was so beautifully given, this
Yeah,
performance. Jacob, oh my gosh, I'm so excited that he's on this show as much as
I
he
know.
is. But I did not expect this Bruce reveal to come up because Claudia is gone. I didn't know that there was going to be any other connections, but they built that up really nicely in this episode.
I think it's another reminder of vampire psychology here. Like, we don't get many
Mhm.
vampire psychologists, but the psychology of these characters is that you're a part of a very, very select small group who
Yep.
live an extremely long period of time. You combine
Yes.
these two elements, as long as you're also adding to it the pain of never really aging, you form these like deep, deep bonds that you're never going to be able to get away from. Like,
Mhm.
the obvious one between Louis and Lestat is there, but for Louis and Claudia, it was such a unique relationship that went through of all of these ups and downs. And I think Louis doesn't want to ever forget what Claudia looks like. It's one of, I think, the most heartbreaking things about losing someone is as time goes on, you start to struggle to remember little details. And I think that kind of spoke through that scene of him
Mhm.
thinking that he saw her and hearing the name Bruce. It kind of conjures up all of this pain, all of this just sadness and anger, and this guy who had seemingly just wanted to focus on his business interests as pseudo Brad Pitt now has an opportunity
Mhm.
to enact a little bit of vengeance.
And I love revenge. It is one of my favorite stories to be told. And man, Claudia really deserves to have this revenge against Bruce and what Bruce did to her.
Mhm.
And she's not here to enact any of this, but Louis is. And as they were talking, they were basically like, we know that you can take care of large groups of vampires, you have in the
Yeah.
past, and you will going forward. And Louis like, no, see ya, I'm fine. And then they drop the name Bruce, and all of a sudden, interest is rising. Oh, Bruce is leading this gang and he's called himself Killer. Okay, I feel like I'm back in.
Louis never going to be able to let this go unless he takes care
No.
of it himself at this point. And I'm a little bit frustrated, not in a bad way, but I'm frustrated that the Talamasca managed to get like this sort of win because I look at, Raglan and I look at this whole ragtag organization and I know there was the Talamasca show and all of that, but at the same time, I'm just thinking,
Canceled.
the Talamasca kind of sucks when it comes to like their
Yeah.
ability to have like good conversations, and it feels like they just bumbled into a win in a lot of ways because the way I didn't think they were handling Louis that great, and then all of a sudden, all right, you guys obviously did know what you were doing to a tiny extent. You dropped Bruce. Louis is going to act on this. You love revenge. The thing
Yes.
that I really love, and this has been true for about the very few action movies that I have seen over the last 10 years. I love watching a hero mow through hundreds of red shirts. Like, it's incredibly unrealistic that they're able to do it, but at the same time, I want to see all of these other vampires just go like boom, 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 boom at Louis' hands just because I know it's going to be really awesomely shot.
Yeah, I mean, also, if they're under Bruce, are they really that good of vampires?
Yeah.
They're probably not great people either. You're the company you keep. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing Louis go and get this revenge and take out Bruce because I love revenge and I hate Bruce. So this has got the makings of a very good episode coming up.
Everything with Louis in this episode, and I know this is Lestat's show, and Louis, I don't know, has like 10 or 15 minutes of screen time in this episode, but like every moment of it was fire. Like, my absolute favorite scene in the entire episode is the sit down between Louis and Daniel because it
Yeah.
really felt to
Yeah.
me, and I think we've all done this sometimes in the back of our head, especially when we're teenagers. We want
Mhm.
to imagine what other people are saying about us. It felt like Lestat pulled out sock puppets of Louis and Daniel and was having this made up conversation with himself. And
Yeah.
it actually worked because it furthered the plot, but it was also so narcissistic at the same time.
I love how they did that, where we had the voiceover of Lestat basically being like, hey, I wasn't here for this conversation, but this is how I imagine it went, which is basically that Daniel is still being terrible and awful and
Yeah.
who he doesn't want to deal with, but that Louis is actually going to be, standing up for Lestat and is going to be like, oh, it's all you, Daniel. Yeah, I said what I said, but you got it wrong. And that this is how Lestat is making it in his mind, because in his heart, he doesn't want to believe that Louis really did him as dirty as he feels he did. And Louis has tried to say that as well. He's like, listen, I told my story, but Daniel did what he did with the story I told him. He's the writer, so he wrote whatever he wrote. And then you've got the Talmasca who published it. So if you have a problem about this book, then that's who you're supposed to go to. They even had that moment where in Lestat's mind, you had Louis even tell Daniel, I would have said no. If you had asked me if it was okay to publish this, I would have said no. And I was just like, oh, okay, Lestat.
Yeah,
He's
sure.
doing all of this so that he can say no.
It's absurd, but in a way, I think this scene really does give me hope for Louis and Lestat, because
Yep.
I'm just sitting back and feeling like, all right, if Lestat in his mind can imagine Louis and Daniel.
And we all rewrite history in our heads when
Yeah.
we want to see what we want to see when we in love.
Yeah, and I think that is the thing with Lestat. I think he still wants to believe deep down the best in Louis. And there is the idea that, all right, Louis was at the show and he is very protective of his identity to Louis. Like, I thought it was very illuminating how so much of Gabriella was intentionally left out of everything that he told Louis,
Yeah.
because he is someone who loves this person. And I think he's trying to keep out certain things that may feel unusual, shall we say. And as Lestat said throughout this episode, he knows his relationship with his mother is unusual.
Yeah, and I mean, it was illuminating to see him as a child too. He was a bit bratty as a child. We saw him in that meeting with Louis where he was getting very pissed off and bratty again about everything, where Louis was like, listen, you hired my doctor, you hired my biographer, you trashed my hotel, and you've got Lestat being like, these songs aren't about you. It's not all, he's so hurt. He's
Yeah.
so hurt. And it's coming across like he's this child again.
Yeah, and I think that's weirdly relatable at times. We've all
Yes.
had moments where we're hurt
Yes.
and we act a little bit childish, but it's just going to be a journey that Lestat goes on, because I think right now he's in a little bit of the denial stage still, hence the whole making up conversations in his head, but then he's also in the pure I want a distraction stage, or he's just trying to focus on other things. I think it's why he's so gleeful to see his mother. It's why he's so willing to go on this really bizarre tour around various haunts and being a little bit reckless and doing things that could come back to bite him just as much as the concert did.
Okay, so let's talk about his band for a second,
Yeah.
because who was surprised that only one band member left? I thought maybe two. I thought maybe everybody was going to be like, you know what, we're just too nervous about it. Maybe one person would be like, you know what? I'll put up with a vampire for a little bit of fame. I mean, that does happen, but I kind of expected more than one person to walk out.
I felt like there would at least be one person who left and came back like a couple of minutes later. I didn't necessarily think, oh, right, they're all going to be gone for a long time, but I thought there would be a little bit more indecision. And I know the writing tried to frame this a little bit as, all right, we've been struggling for so long.
Yeah.
This is our only shot. And yeah, a certain amount of that may be true. And maybe they're playing into desperation. And because I was a musician through high school, in part because it got me out of gym class. I'm not a musician on this level, so I don't know what that desperation is like. But yeah, it is a lot to kind of buy that they would be that willing to deal with not just all of this, but the massive like attempts at a cover up that is happening in this conversation after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, they all signed NDAs, so here you go. You signed it, so you might as well create music and get famous and get rich.
It really, like, we were both wondering how they were going to try to deal with everything that happened, the calamity with the
Yes.
Fang Gang in episode one.
The Fang Gang.
They kind of dealt with it, but it also feels like they just took out, I don't know, a roll of very, not even duct tape, but like that tape you get that wrap packages that
Mhm.
just falls apart after 2 seconds. And they were like, all better. We got nothing to worry about here. There's no more problems. Lestat, have a good time.
Okay, we're 15 minutes and we have to talk about the Gabriella story, which is making me so uncomfortable to
Yeah.
watch. I get it. I get where they're going with this, and that all makes sense. They've laid it out, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it's just such an ick about it. I mean, we've watched Game of Thrones. It
Yeah.
was ick there too, and I'm just like, I'm here for Lestat and Louis at this
Yeah.
point, and I'm not here for this. It's so awkward to sit through it. You know, his mom is very hot and cold with a lot of stuff where she's coming across as a little bit jealous that they had Claudia together, that they, he had given him a kid and that their relationship had blossomed into this. But then she's also just pulling back. She's just such a narcissist.
This is where I just like she's hot and cold. Like I'm having my hot and cold moments with this storyline too, because like there's some parts of it I think are really interesting. Like one of the whole purposes beyond the cabage nonsense of the first part of this episode
Yeah.
was establishing this is who Gabriella was before the transformation and what she was going through, her sickness, like these sacrifices that she was having to make for a lot of these other people in the family that weren't even grateful for all of it.
Yeah, and I mean, it
Mhm.
made a lot of sense for Lestat as well when we saw where he came from, what was going on. It
Yeah.
turns out he did have a stutter as a kid, was very insecure, had older siblings that were pretty bad to him. His dad wasn't interested in him, and his mom was the only person that took any interest in him at all. So, from a very young age until he was an adult, where their relationship turned another way, she was the person that was the only person there for him and leading him into these different experiences. So I see how Lestat got there,
Yeah.
but it's still, but
Yeah, that's the thing. I understand fully Lestat's desire to try to give his mother this life that they didn't have back when
right.
she was mortal, and I think that's a big driving force. But that does not mean that we all have to be on board with watching this relationship play out the way that it is in
Oh,
the present, because those are just like
ooh.
two entirely different things.
They absolutely are, but I will say I want to give the show a lot of credit for sort of that opening monologue of Lestat basically being like, yeah, this is what's happening. Here's the graphic detail of me and her and us together. You guys have to deal with this if you're
Yeah.
going to be part of my life and my universe and this story. There was no sugarcoating it, and I appreciate that the show did not do that, that it was in your face. This is what's happening. That's what Lestat is. And either you're on this ride or you're getting off the ride. There's a door.
Yeah, it's wildly uncomfortable, but at the same time, this is Lestat's story. Lestat is
Yes.
somebody who's going to be very blunt, very, very direct. It suits, weird as it is to say, like it fits into this idea of this is Lestat being hedonistic throughout this season and really just being like, this is my life, take it or leave it. I don't care what anybody else thinks about me.
Okay. So my tinfoil hat is back on
Yeah.
again of who bought this music box, because Lestat had not really told Louis anything about his mom. She even said, how
Yeah.
much does he know about me? Oh, he just knows that you died way back when, and that
Mhm.
is all he knows. And so the fact that he's telling this part of his story so openly on these records, to me feels like he is banking on only Louis buying this, that this isn't a story that's out for the Talamasca to buy or whoever else to buy, Armand to buy, that he is really banking that Louis is going to be the person that's going to buy this and learn these private things about him, that maybe Lestat didn't feel okay to actually look Louis in the eye and tell these things.
And that happens in life,
Oh,
vampire or not. It's just like there are things you can't bring yourself to say because you don't know how somebody else is going to react. Maybe you
right.
put them in writing, maybe you record them. I'm going to keep the tinfoil hat on here because this is where I kind of think things are going at this point. I do agree with you fully that I think all of this was produced for Louis' sake.
Yeah.
Now, I think the question then becomes, all right, how did you know to come up with all of this and to do this at this particular time? I feel like it's tied in some ways to Akasha. Like we've said in the premiere, we've not read the books, not that
No,
familiar with the source material.
no.
However, I did see this casting notice come out back when Akasha was cast, so I know that this is an extremely powerful individual,
Hmm.
and they've sort of foreshadowed now on the show that this person may be coming. And by the way, for those of you who don't know who Akasha is, the basic way without spoiling anything is that she's basically a mother of vampires. She's very, very ancient and very, very powerful. And they announced this casting, and it feels like we're going to be seeing this character at some point pretty soon. And so I'm kind of feeling like Lestat does his whole Lestat thing, makes a gigantic mess of his life, everyone around him, and basically puts it in this situation that not even the Talamasca can clean it up, because we saw from the Talamasca and their bleh ways in this episode, they didn't really want to deal with this stuff anyway.
No.
In comes Akasha. Lestat's gonna know I've got a problem, so I need to do something to make sure my story gets passed along to Louis. And then, as for what actually happened to Lestat, like that's an entirely different mystery, but
Yeah.
it feels like on some level, he knew that something was going to be happening to him, and it just feels like that's somebody who would probably be responsible for it.
Yeah.
The only other person I could think about would be Gabriella, but that's just in the I'm disappointed in you sort of way. But just based on what we saw in Gabriella in this episode, I kind of don't really think they're going in that direction anymore.
Yeah, a lot of it depends, this music box, on if they feel that Lestat is going to be giving away secrets. I mean, why else would Armand be there?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, speaking of Armand, the one other thing I know he wasn't really in this episode, having Daniel kind of long for Armand in a way, despite their rocky relationship, like I thought that was really interesting. And it's
Yeah.
the nice little reminder of the relationship that forms, because before this happened, it's not exactly like Daniel was the most pro Armand person in the
Mhm.
world at all. So there's just a little bit of character development, and that's something I hope we see later this season.
And it was very interesting, since this is a retelling through Lestat, who was not at this meeting, that he actually, in his mind, Louis said no, that he doesn't feel that same way.
All right, well, that is where we are coming out of the Vampire Lestat,
Mhm.
season 3, episode 2. Where do you believe all of this may be going with Lestat, with Bruce, with that big jaw dropper? Let us know in the comments. And yeah, you can support us further by joining our memberships. We have a whole video there discussing, is Lestat still alive?
Yep.
Thank you so much for your support. We will see you here next time.